Boom, there it goes. Live on YouTube. Right on, right on. All right. I am Kurt Von Annen. I am with Mañana No Mas, and this is level 4 of the 5 levels of leadership as as written by John C. Maxwell. Those of you that are new to me or to the Mañana No Mas effort, you should know that I'm a John Maxwell certified speaker on leadership. I'm a trainer, I'm a coach. I'm also a web developer. I develop learning websites, and I enjoy being able to jump in, kind of in real time and talk with you guys and have a very real conversation about this book, The 5 Levels of Leadership by John C. Maxwell. Tuesdays at 3 is kind of my thing. Tuesday at 3 o'clock PST. I try to be consistent. I try to keep things going on time. And as I go from one subject to another, sometimes I take a week or two off and then re-ramp it back up with a new subject. Earlier, we did Leadership, another book by John C. Maxwell. We did Seeing the Big Picture. Let me grab this for you. We did Seeing the Big Picture by Kevin Cope. That was one of our Tuesday shows. That was just a one session only. And then this one, The 5 Levels of Leadership. This is a book that we've been covering. I believe this is our fifth session on this book. And then there'll be one more to finish this 5 levels. Now you're coming into this and you're going, oh my goodness, I missed, sessions 1, 2, 3, and 4. Not the end of the world. What I do is I take these videos and I aggregate them together and I make a lesson out of it. Make a course with a series of lessons, and I put that into what's called the Mañana No Mas Academy. Now, Mañana No Mas is a website. You can go to mañananomas.com. There's a lot of blog material in there, stuff on leadership and travel and fitness and mountain biking, things like that. But at the top of that menu, you'll see a thing called Academy. When you click on Academy, that launches you into our learning site. And we've got courses in there that range anywhere from free up to $2,000, right? It just depends on what your appetite is, what your market is, and what you're trying to do. If you're new to online learning, I highly suggest that you Embrace the Process through the Mañana No Mas Academy. It's a free course that I've offered to give people kind of an indoctrination into how online training kind of looks and feels and tastes, that kind of thing, give you that experience of working within our frame set. And if it's something that you like, if it's something that you find enjoyment or value out of, well, then let's have that conversation. Do you want to do a membership with a bulk of courses? Do you want to do courses a la carte? Or is this something that you need to have developed for your company, for your organization? And that is something that I do for folks. So as you go through this with me, as you spend this quality time that we'll do over the next 55 minutes or so, I just want you to know who I am, what this is about, why I'm doing it. Now, during the COVID crisis, I thought it was hugely important to address the idea that we've got a leadership gap in our culture and our country especially, right? And what's unique about this is we have people that watch this show from Belgium, from Italy, from Australia, from Canada, from Mexico, from Turkey, Japan. Wow, we've had people sign in from all over the place to kind of see the show and see what's been covered and what kind of value John Maxwell material can bring, right? And for me, it's super, super humbling. But I do want to be bold. This is the reason that I'm covering this stuff is because I feel that there's a leadership vacuum in our country. I know that it's a hotbed of activity right now. Everybody's like, well, where do you stand on Black Lives Matter? Where do you stand on this? Where do you stand on that? That's not what this is about. This is about leadership. This is about, filling that gap. If Black Lives Matter is your passion, is something that you're pursuing, well, how can you be the best leader in that environment? If you are a pastor at a Baptist church, what about this kind of training helps you take better care of your flock within your church, unit in the COVID crisis, right? There's all these things that we can think about. If you run a bicycle team, how can you be the best leader to that bicycle team? So I am not doing this to perpetuate any political message or religious message, but I am trying to help people become the best leaders they can in the specialty, in the region, in the vertical, shaft that they are trying to be the best leader in. So with no further ado, folks, I would love to jump into level 4 of the 5 levels of leadership. And just as kind of as a refresher of some point, we talked about the first level of leadership, and that was position leadership, right? Positional leadership. Then we talked about permissional leadership, and permissional might be a word I made up. I don't know. We'll have to look it up someday if we feel so inclined. But permissional leadership. So one was positional, right? You got the job. You're the boss. Congratulations. Now what, right? Permissional leadership. That's where you build enough relationship with your people that they actually want to be on your team, right? People want to have a relationship with you. When you get to the point where people want to have a relationship with you and want to be on your team, well, now you can lead them. And that's the pathway to the third level. The third level is productivity, right? How do we take a team and be productive? Part of being a leader is about increasing the production, right? Well, level 4 is about people development. People development. Now, if you remember, if you were with me, or if you've decided to take the course on the Mañana No Mas Academy, you'll know that there's a section in Leadership that talks about going from climbing the ladder to building a ladder, right? Go from climbing ladders to building ladders. So you might want to climb the ladder of success, and you can climb that ladder. But once you know how to climb the ladder, a good leader extends his hand out and he pulls other people up the ladder with him, right? And when you get good enough at climbing ladders and pulling people with you up the ladder, well, sooner or later, you give them a ladder, right? You build a ladder and you give it to them. And then you let them climb their own ladder and bring people up the ladder with them, right? And that's kind of what this chapter is about. This chapter is called People Development, right? Helping individual leaders grow, extend your influence and impact. If you were to read the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, this would fall directly into the laws of addition and the laws of multiplicity, right? So if I keep doing everything myself, I'm plugging along. When I lead others and I bring others on my team, that's the law of addition, right? I'm bringing them on and I'm adding them to my team, right? But when I can build up people that have certain qualities, when I can recognize someone, hey, that person's got potential to be a leader, and I invest in that person and I help build them into a leader of their own with their own team to build. Well, that's the law of multiplicity, right? That's exciting. So now I was able to be so productive by myself, right? Like, I'm really good at what I do, but this is what I can do. This is all the time I've got. This is what I can do. Then I build a team and I can get this much done. And the people on my team are pretty special, but this is what we can get done, right? Now imagine on this team, I pick out a couple of leaders and I train them, and they build teams this size while I replace them in my team and keep my team this size. Are you with me? So this is what I could do by myself. This is what I could do with my team. Now, if let's say I build 3 more leaders, right? Well, now it's like boom, boom, boom. Now I've got this much. I'm trying to make this much. Now I've got this much that I have influence over. Does that make sense? So that's why building a team with leaders is so, so important. And that's level 4, people development. So if we can, I'd like to jump in. Level 4 in the book starts on page 179 if you're following along. And he starts right off with, and if you're new, this is what I do. I read the book ahead of time and I underline the highlights. And then I share the highlights with you and try to expose, extrapolate the idea a little bit for you. And so I'm not reading the book. I'm kind of going over the highlights and trying to fill you in. And I only got an hour to cover 50 pages. So I'm going to go through this pretty quick. But like I say, the replay will be in the Academy. And if you've got your own book, you're able to read the whole thing, but you're able to kind of cheat with me, right? And go over the highlights and go, oh, that's why I picked that. That's smart. Or, hey, I would have picked something else, right? But let's go. So page 181, right at the top, I highlighted effective leaders understand what got them to their current level of leadership won't be enough to get them to the next one, right? And that is so, so, so important. What effective leaders understand that what got you to the current level of leadership won't get you to the next one, right? So you got to constantly change your game. That's what Leadership was about, right? Change your game, adapt, and be ready to go. It says on level 3, the emphasis on personal and corporate productivity and the ability to create a highly productive team or department or organization indicates a higher level of leadership than many others display. And that's true. A lot of leaders aren't leaders. A lot of leaders are just managers, right? They're maintaining, right? But a leader grows, right? Now, so some people never get to level 3. Now we're talking about level 4, right? says, but to reach the upper levels of leadership that create elite organizations, leaders must transition from producers to developers. Why? Because people are any organization's most appreciable asset. I am watching corporations and small companies all over our country right now increase sales. Like, I can't figure this out. Increase retail sales and cut staff. They're taking the COVID crisis as like a green light to say, man, I got to cut some people. I got to lay some people off. My expenses are going up through the roof. I got to cut some people out. But they're selling more product, right? So I'm saying to myself, why is this happening? They're treating the product as if it's the asset instead of the people as if it's the asset. And any successful company with a long-range plan focuses on the people. The people are the most appreciative asset that any company has. The culture you put inside your company or your organization is what gives it its value. The product is a byproduct of those people, right? So we'll move on. All the chapters in this book go upside of whatever, downside of whatever, and then how to get to that point, right? So the upside of people development, right? So what's the benefit of developing your people? The first thing, people development sets you apart from most leaders, right? Most leaders don't develop their people. Most leaders aren't leaders at all. Most leaders are managers, right? So most leaders are looking for ways to grow their organizations. Where do they usually focus their attention? On level 3. They work to increase production, and that's the wrong focus. How do you grow a company? By growing the people in it. And if you really want to expand the organization and its potential, focus on growing the leaders, right? So 1, people development sets you apart from most leaders. Later in that same little grouping there, and he's got quotes from Jim Blanchard and all kinds of stuff, but he's got one that says, when you look at people who are eager to learn more, and this is from Ken Blanchard, you can bet they are on the right track. When you look at people who are eager to learn more, you can bet they're on the right track. And what he's talking about is when you're working with people that have a hunger to learn, a hunger to develop, a hunger to grow, those are the people that you want to single out. You want to invest in them. And it's all right if other people see you doing that. It's not favoritism. It's called being smart, right? So you want to find people that have an eagerness and then try to fill that hunger, right? Give them the information that they need. If you want the best for your organization, you need to invest in its people. And that's where the greatest potential is. Number 2, people development assures that growth can be sustained, okay? Here's my thing with this COVID crisis. I personally know multiple companies that are experiencing a growth in retail sales, right? They're having a spurt of an increase, but they're not investing in their people. I'm looking at power sports dealerships, for example, because that's my niche, right? That's what I focus on. I'm looking at power sports dealerships that are increasing their retail sales, but haven't done anything to prepare their service department for the increased demand that those sales are going to create in their departments. So how is the service department, if it doesn't change its ways, going to deal with an increased demand on its parts and services? Well, it's going to fail, right? They're going to say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't get your bike in for the next month. I can't get your bike in for the next 6 weeks. I can't get your bike in, until September 15th. And that's not going to fly. People that just spent $15,000 on a new motorcycle are going to want their first service done within 4 or 5 days of calling to ask to get the first service done. So if these dealerships were being proactive and training their service people and working to build that relationship with the customers, they would have already have turned the customer over from sales to service, right? Kept the relationship and the conversation going and pre-booked that service appointment as the bike was being delivered. And then as that service appointment came closer, somebody would be calling from the service department to verify that that appointment was still reasonable, right? And then have that person come in at that time or readjust that time during that follow-up call. But by not planning for the surge in increased demand, they're not going to meet the surge in increased demand. You hear what I'm saying? So it's super, super important, right? You need to know that the growth that you're experiencing can be sustained, and that only happens through developing your people. Here's what it says that I highlighted here on page 186. It says words such as, how can I accomplish so much, were music to my ears. Only after I left the organization did the music stop. I realized, and this is from John Maxwell, And I realized that as soon as my personal touch was no longer on a particular task or effort, it wasn't sustained. And as a result, many of the things I built ceased to thrive, or in some cases, even to exist after my exit. I had flunked the leadership test. Okay? What John's saying is, if he recognized before he became the leadership guru he is today, he recognized that he was really good at a position. He was really good at setting up a process. He was really good at, organizing things while he was there. And as long as he was there, things clicked right along, right? But he noticed that when he left, the click was gone. Things began to fall out of sorts, and nobody was there with accountability to keep it together. And then he noticed, well, maybe I didn't do a good job of setting people up to succeed in my absence. I once left a job. This is a true story, and this is a real story about leadership. I left a job. I knew I was going to leave a vacuum in the position when I left. So I wrote like a 48-page, color document, an illustrated directions guide on, hey, I'm leaving. This is how you want to take these projects over, and you want to find success within the program using, these processes that I've established. And then I went on to include, this is who I would suggest for this. This is who I would suggest for that. And this is what I think is the recipe for success after I leave. Well, the leader that was in place then, he just flat out didn't like me. I mean, it's the one place where things didn't go well, right? So I left that company, but I, in good conscience, right, in a good effort, in good faith, had left them all these instructions on how to find success with what I had built. That's what a good leader does. A good leader says, let me set you up for success. Let me give you the tools, right? Now, if leadership in your absence can't execute, can't make that happen, don't adopt that as your fault, right? But make sure you give people the opportunity, make sure you give them the chance to find success. And so that was there, right? On page 187, I highlighted, if you've been successful leading on levels 1, 2, and 3, you have the potential to move up to level 4. It will require you to shift from doing to developing. And this is one of the hardest things to do as a leader. It's so easy to say, man, it's easier if I just do this myself, right? And that's kind of what's going to come up here in a little bit. There's going to be a section where John's going to talk about, hey, sometimes it's easier to do it yourself. You're going to say, I could just do this myself. And the truth is, it is easier to just do it yourself. But that's not developing leaders, right? You develop a leader by delegating and allowing them to do it, even though it might take you more effort up front. But if you're good at delegating and you're good at following up and you're good at coaching, well, then in the end game, right? You got to think long term. In the end game, you're going to have delegated successfully, and they're going to grow and flourish in that area, allowing you to grow and flourish at the next highest level, right? That takes us to 3. People development empowers others to fulfill their leadership responsibilities. I'll say that again. People development empowers others to fulfill their leadership responsibilities. Developing yourself as a leader is great. That's levels 1, 2, and 3, right? But seriously, what makes you so special? Why are you the only one getting developed? 1, 2, and 3. Boom, you're a great leader now. Fantastic, right? No, if you're a true leader, you now owe it to others to help them develop their leadership potential, right? So it says many leaders become a lid on their teams or organizations. Remember the law of the lid. It's the first law in the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership that John wrote. And the law of the lid states that leadership can only be as good as the highest ability of its leader, right? And so you don't want to be the lid. You don't want to be the one that's the cap that keeps your company from going here to here, right? John Quincy Adams, he said, if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, and do more, you are a leader. When you give someone responsibility and authority, they not only learn, but they also start to fulfill their leadership responsibilities. And that action transforms people and organizations. I highlighted a paragraph that says the second benefit comes to the organization. With the addition of more good leaders, the organization's current efforts improve. Every developed leader adds more horsepower to the organization, and expanding the leadership of the organization also gives it the ability to expand its territory and take on new initiatives. All right. That takes us to page 190. Man, we're cruising through this. We only got 37 pages to go. All right. There's one from Melinda Gates in here, right? Like I said, we're going to cross all kinds of political boundaries. So, philanthropist Melinda Gates understood this dynamic at an incredibly early age. In her valedictory address at Ursuline Academy, 1982, she said, "If you are successful, it is because somewhere, sometime, someone gave you a life or an idea that started you off on the right direction." So I think about this a lot. My parents split up when I was young. My mom was not a very good leader in the home. She had things to do. She had her own personal stuff to take care of as a grown woman, a divorced woman in the 70s and 80s. She also worked. She had multiple jobs. Sometimes she would work more than one shift at a time to help us keep a roof over our head and food on the table, right? My dad was not a leader. My dad was not a leader at all. So I look around and I go, where did this come from? How am I even somewhat inspired, not only to be a leader, but to teach other people to be leaders? Where does this come from? And when I was 19, there was an old man named Earl Rotenberry. He was my supervisor at a warehouse. And that old man invested in me. He told me things like how to treat ladies, work conditions, how to work hard. I was always a hard worker, but he taught me how to work hard and efficient. He taught me about productivity versus profitability. He taught me about not making things look too easy, right? Because I had a habit of working real hard, making it look easy, and then goofing around half the day. And people would think I was an idiot because all I did was goof around all day. But my job was done, right? And so he was really instrumental in pouring some of these insights into me. And I really liked Earl from that. And so I look at that, right? It's because sometime, someone gave you a life or an idea that started you off in the right direction. And I would say way back then, Earl gave me a push in the right direction. It's unfortunate that I lost touch with Earl, and then immediate input into my life after that wasn't so positive. It wasn't until like in my 30s that I started to get my act back together, right? There's a couple other ones. Pepperdine University's got a couple of quotes in here, but let's move on to 4, right? People development empowers the leader to lead larger. This is huge. We talked about positional leadership. We talked about permissional leadership. We talked about productivity, right? So that's where I made that little sign with my hands with that little circle, right? So people development empowers the leader to lead larger, right? Many leaders don't want to share responsibility with others because they don't want to lose any of their power, right? Leaders always need more quality thinking time. Yet because most leaders have a bias toward action, they often don't have it, right? John uses the 80% rule. If someone on his team can do one of the tasks 80% as well as he does it, then he gives him or her the responsibility. And if you want to be an effective leader, you must move from perfectionist to pragmatist. Now, here's what's really fun about doing lives. I have got to open the door and see what this noise is outside because it is incredible. All right, hang on, folks. Part of leadership. I'll be right back. It's the only thing I have without food. Have a good one. All right. That big giant noise outside was the FedEx driver in a rental truck. Oh, playing old school rap and dance music as loud as it would possibly go. So I apologize, but I am back. And like I say, that is the fun of doing lives, right? It seems like something's always going on whenever I click the live button. But thanks for hanging out. If you've stuck with me, that is fantastic. We are on the fourth section of people development empowers the leader to lead larger, right? And we talked about the 80% rule right before I took that short break. 5, people development provides great personal fulfillment. Great personal fulfillment. And in fact, I went a little crazy on this page and went for a bunch of highlights, right? And here's why. There's a lot going on here. It says in his book, Man the Manipulator, Everett Shostrom quotes a teacher who learned the secret to reaching people and changing their lives. So here's his quote. I had a great feeling of relief when I began to understand that a youngster needs more than just subject matter. I know mathematics well and I teach it well. I used to think that was all I needed to do. Now I teach children, not math. I accept the fact that I can only succeed partially with some of them. When I don't have to know all the answers, I seem to have more answers than when I tried to be the expert. The youngster who really made me understand this was Eddie. I asked him one day why he thought he was doing so much better than last year, and he gave meaning to my whole new orientation. It's because I like myself now when I'm with you, he said. So the kid underneath his care is learning more because the kid recognizes he's being invested in rather than he's being shouted out a bunch of math facts, right? You got that? It's kind of goes back to that level 2 leadership, right? Building on the relationship, right? But now we're talking about building leaders within, right? So he's trying to identify by working with the people and focusing on the kids, he's able to focus on them rather than the content, okay? It says the greatest satisfaction in life comes from giving to others. Now, over here I put a quote from Starbucks, the owner of Starbucks, Howard Schultz. It says, victory is much more meaningful when it comes not just from one person, but from the joint achievements of many. The euphoria is lasting when all participants lead with their hearts, winning just not for themselves, but for one another. And then John goes on to talk about Mark and Stephanie. Mark Cole is the CEO of multiple companies for John. So Mark and Stephanie talks about them. Dave and Lori Hoyt were there. Dave handles all the speaking engagements. Charlie and Stephanie Wetzel. Charlie co-writes books with John, and Stephanie does a lot of the social media stuff, right? Patrick and Linda Eggers, right? Patrick used to be a member of John's board. And what he's saying here is he's looking at all the leaders he's developed and that he continues to work with. And what he says here at the end, he says, as I looked around the table last night, I thought 3 things because, you know, it had these people at the table. First, these people that I have helped to develop have really grown me. And in the beginning, I helped them more than they helped me. Today, they help me more than I help them. This is a huge return in developing people. Second, these are true friends. Our best times are when we are with each other. In 2010, we all went to Israel together and we had a blast. The journey of life is not meant to be traveled alone. I'm grateful I get to travel much of it with them. And then third, he says his greatest fulfillment has come not from the books he has written, the companies he started, or the recognition he's received. His greatest fulfillment comes from the people I love, especially the people from whom I've helped to develop. The amount of satisfaction that comes from helping people get to that next level is so much fun. I used to teach people how to road race motorcycles. I used to teach people how to ride motorcycles, right, for the Motorcycle Safety Foundation. And just when you are communicating with someone and you're showing someone a new skill, and this is for anyone that teaches, anyone that teaches anything tactily, right? Anything that you do with your hands or your feet or whatever, right? Any physical motion that you teach. My daughter, she takes figure skating lessons. So her coach would show her how to do a new spin. It's that same experience. You pour into somebody, you mentor them, and all of a sudden you see the excitement. The lights come on, their eyes get wider, and they almost become a new creature, right? Because they're newly invigorated with this new piece of information or inspiration that you've given them. Pardon me, how wonderful is that, right? That's one of the most fulfilling things that can happen. So those are all the upsides of level 4 leadership. Now, John gives it to you both ways, right? We've covered this throughout this book so far. What's the downside of people development, right? Leading on level 4 requires high levels of maturity and skill. It says there's a reason why many leaders don't develop people. It's not easy, and there's no guarantee that it'll work. Every leader has a horror story of investing in others that turned out badly. You pour yourself into some people and nothing happens. I can vouch for that. Some people take without giving anything in return. Well, that's more so than not lately, right? Others make an effort but fall short of your expectations. It's going to happen. And sometimes you give your best to someone and he turns out to be an absolute star. And then he leaves and becomes part of another organization. What can be worse than that? And then John tells you, he says, well, how about not training them and having them stay? In each of these cases, if someone, makes an effort but falls short of the expectations, he's still improved from where he started, right? The person that took without giving anything in return, they still became better. And they're still on your team, apparently, because it doesn't say they left, right? You pour yourself into some people and nothing happens. Hopefully you recognize that soon enough, and then you replace that person, or you change your projection, and you project your values onto the next target, right? But it's interesting to say that. It says, if you think about it, you have only one great choice as a leader. If you want to lead to the full extent of your potential, you need to invest in your people. People development requires a very high maturity level. It also requires a very high level of skill that can create problems for some leaders, and it prevents many from following through with it. Here are the primary causes of breakdowns on level 4. And then in John fashion, man, he breaks it down into subsections again, right? So 4 reasons, right? Is that what he said? 4 reasons? Nope. Here are the primary causes of breakdowns on level 4. Self-centeredness can cause leaders to neglect people development, right? If you're a self-centered leader, you're not thinking of others first, you're thinking of yourself. It says, so if you want to move up to level 4, get over your selfishness, get outside of yourself, and adopt an attitude of a speaker and master salesman. Like Zig Ziglar, he said, if you help others get what they want, they will help you get what you want. Insecurity. Insecurity can make leaders feel threatened by people development. That's number 2. No amount of competency can compensate for personal insecurity. That means no matter how good you are at what you do, if you don't have confidence, you're not going to be able to be a good leader. I mean, you might be able to be a good leader 1, 2, and 3, but not when it comes to sharing the role, right? Because your insecurity is not going to let that happen. Now, there's different ways that insecurity can manifest itself. John breaks that down into ego, control, and trust. Right? So he says, if you're experiencing problems with insecurity, is it your ego? Is it your control? Or is it a trust issue? Do you not have trust established with your people? Which takes you back to level 2 leadership, realistically, right? If you need to reestablish trust with people, it means you need to go back to level 2, work on relationships, maintain level 3 for productivity, and then get back to level 4 and see who you're going to develop, right? It's the leadership dance like we talked about in Leadership, right? If we go to 3, it says short-sightedness can keep leaders from seeing the need to develop people. Short-sightedness that's what I was talking about earlier, right? Where I could just do it myself. It says, how many times have you considered giving someone something to do and instead thought it's easier to just do it myself? I bet you've done it often. Why? Because it's easier, right? Doing the work yourself is always faster and easier than developing other people to do it, but that's short-term thinking. To become a developer of people, you have to be willing to adopt a long-term mindset, right? And then you have to ask people, what can you do and how can I help you develop that, right? And that's that next level. Number 4 says lack of commitment can keep leaders from doing the hard work of people development. If you're surrounded at a company by a bunch of cats that are coming up on retirement, how committed are they to developing the people underneath them? Because realistically, to them, that's where short-sightedness takes over, right? That's where they're thinking, man, I just got to get to the end of this thing. I just got to get to the brass ring, bro. And when I get the brass ring, I'm out of here. Some leaders take that as the inspiration to develop leaders and really go out on a high note. In other leaders, man, they just spool down. They get short timer's disease, and they just want to survive the day, one day at a time, until it's time to go. And when you're in an environment like that, that's horribly caustic. I know from experience that can be a very difficult place to be. So let's go into the best behaviors. The best behaviors on level 4, how to develop people, right? I'm on page 203, in case you're following in the book. It says it takes a leader to know a leader, right? So for recruiting and positioning purposes, it takes a leader to be able to identify potential leaders. And so for recruiting and positioning, you need to use that skill, right? It takes a leader to know a leader. It takes a leader to show a leader, right? You're going to have to model leadership to your onboarding leaders, right? You're going to have to model what that looks like in your organization or your effort. It takes a leader to grow a leader, develop, empower, and measure leaderships as they grow. Once you adopt the role of growing a leader, when he says measuring is something that I think gets misused a lot. You have a relationship with this person that you're trying to mentor as a leader. You're a leader and you're trying to mentor them as a leader, right? You're trying to bring them up, right? That's the ladder climbing, ladder holding, ladder building situation, right? And so you're trying to extend this person their own ladder to climb. And measuring them is people, I'm trying to not use the word judge. I don't want to judge people, right? But I want to evaluate. I want to be able to evaluate leadership with them. I want to be able to have an interactive discussion with them. I want to be able to take their pulse, take their temperature, and see how they think things are going from their perspective, right? Super, super important. You want to make sure that, not only that they're growing the way you want them to as a leader, right? But remember, it's not always about you. Are they growing the way they want to as a leader, right? And so you got to get their feedback and take their temperature and their heartbeat and all those things, their fingerprint, whatever you want to say, the pulse. And you want to make sure that you're measuring them. And it sounds like judging, but it's not judging. It's working with, right? It's taking measurement. It's analyzing. And just like when you set a goal, you have the snapshot and then where you want to go and then all the little steps to get where you want to go. That's kind of like the measurement of becoming a leader, right? How do you feel you're doing with your team? How do you feel you're developing your relationship with so-and-so? How do you feel that you're developing your relationship with this person? How do you feel that those two people are able to interact after interacting with you, right? And so these are questions and ways to help measure somebody that you're mentoring up in leadership, right? So when it says measure, I just wanted to be super clear there about, the whole measure thing, right? Developing, empowering, and measuring, right? So you want to help people grow and then take note of how that growth is happening. Now he breaks it into multiple things here. And so the first thing is recruiting, finding the best people possible, right? The key to success in recruiting is a clear picture of who you were looking for. It's so fun. He uses baseball as an example in this one. He says many years ago, Charlie Grimm was the manager of a Major League Baseball's Chicago Cubs. Speaker Linda Ellerby tells the story of how one season the Cubs were having a hard time winning games because they didn't have any good hitters. It's said that Grimm received a phone call one day from an excited scout who enthused Charlie. Charlie, I've landed the greatest young pitcher in the land. He struck out every man who came to bat, 27 in a row. Nobody even got a foul until 2 were out in the 9th. The pitcher is right here with me. What shall I do? Right? And Grimm says, sign up the guy who got the foul. We're looking for hitters. How important is that, right? You got to know what you're looking for. When I'm consulting with power sports dealerships, I'll be looking and I'll say, okay, they might have a gap or a deficiency in the parts department. They might have a gap or a deficiency in the service writing area, right? And then the owner of the dealership will come up to me and he says, man, I need to get a master tech bad. I just need a master tech in here. If I had a master tech, everything would be going so great. I need a master tech. And it's like, stop, please. You need to know what you're looking for. If you had a master tech on staff right now, you have so much wrong between parts and the service counter. You wouldn't be able to keep that master tech busy. You wouldn't be able to engage that master tech at the level he needs engaged at to meet his satisfaction, to meet his requirements, right? You think because you're the business owner that you're up here and everyone else is down here, when in reality, you're here. And if you hire a master tech and your shop's not equipped to deal with a master tech on staff, the master tech's up here. And you find yourself as the dealer owner having to answer to a master technician because you failed on all these other levels, right? And so it's real important to know what you're looking for. So it says the key to success in recruiting is a clear picture of who you're looking for. Can't stress that enough. You've got to have a strategy about how you're building your team, the order you're building your team, and how you can keep everybody engaged within the team. It says when I go looking for potential leaders, I use what I call the 4 C's. Of course, there's 4, right? 4 things. John breaks it into 4. Chemistry, character, capacity, and contribution, right? Capacity, it says, as you look at a potential leader, try to assess their capacity in the following areas: stress management, skill, thinking, leadership, attitude. Huge. Attitude's a big one, right? But stress management, how do they deal with stuff? Skill, do they have the muster to get it done, right? Thinking, do they have critical thinking? Can they develop strategies? Leadership, can they build a team? Attitude, can they overcome negativity, right? So he's looking for those things. That's under capacity, right? So the 4 things were chemistry, character, capacity, and contribution. Seeing it in writing the way John writes it, it makes me realize that contribution is probably one of the most attractive things about hiring me. Like I think about all these companies that have hired me in the past, and they may or may not have understood it when they hired me, but then after I got in the door, they saw it. And it's one of those things. It says, some people possess an X factor. They're winners. They contribute beyond their job responsibilities, and they lift the performance of everyone on their team. When you discover people with these characteristics, recruit them. They are a joy to develop, and whatever you put into them returns to you compounded. Every company I've ever been to, I have accomplished more than what the position stated, right? So like at Suzuki, I was in charge of publications and training, right? So being in charge of publications and training is one little subset. But next thing you know, I'm in charge of recall completions and different campaigns and some marketing things and stuff like that, right? So it's being a contributor is so huge, but being a contributor with the right chemistry, being a contributor with the right chemistry and the capacity for growth and strategy, right? Think of all these things have to come together. So when you're recruiting a leader, you need to start looking for all those things. Positioning, placing the right people in the right position. This leads me to think about Rod Tillery. Rod Tillery is a friend of mine that has a company called Perfect Match Hire, right? And what he does is he scientifically looks at a position that a company might have and then filters applications through this scientific, analysis of that position to find just the right person, find the person that is hardwired for that job, right? And that's why Rod and his company are part of the Mañana No Mas training situation. When I work and consult with a company directly, if they're looking to hire people, I will generally recommend that they go through Rod to make sure they hire the right type of person for the right position. It's huge. It's so huge. You've got to have the right person in the right place. He goes to basketball on this one, but there's a basketball coach that said, when I first started coaching, people told me to put my 5 best players on the court, but I realized early on this was not the key to success. It wasn't putting the 5 best players on the court that was going to cause the win. It was putting the 5 players on the court who could work together the best. We won the championship because we put people together. They weren't always our best players. 3 is modeling, right? Showing others how to lead. You know, and if you want to show others how to lead, it comes from being authentic, having some servanthood, some growth, be excellent in what you do, have a passion for it. But you want to be able to be the example for people that you want to pull up the ladder with you, right? Equipping others to do the job well. This one I actually have a little bit of a stumbling block on, right? John talks about, you know, you have to equip people to find success, right? And he uses a thing about an all-star baseball team. You know, Jack Benny was the coach, and he basically told someone, hey, go out there and hit a home run. And the guy didn't hit a home run. And Jack Benny goes, well, that's it. If people aren't going to listen to me, I quit, right? I can't manage this team. You have to give people the tools to succeed. But there comes a point where you've given people the tools, or you've gone as far as you can, and you realize they're not going to take ownership. They're not motivated to fulfill the role that they assumed they were going to fill. And when that happens, you got to be able to cut it off. You got to be able to put your foot down and go, hey, you know, we got to put this to a side, right? So here's what you do. When you want to equip somebody, you do it yourself. You show that you have the competence to get it done. You do it yourself, right? Then you do it, and that other person's with you, right? So now you're demonstrating, you're being the example, right? And then you have the other person do it, but you're still with them. They're not alone yet, right? So you get good at it, and then you show somebody else how to do it, and then you let them do it, and you hang out with them to make sure it goes okay, right? And then you say, okay, cool, you got this, right? And then the next step is, you got this, but now you're training somebody else. If you example leadership properly and you onboard somebody and you show them how to do it, and then you work with them while they do it, and then you let them do it by themselves for a while and they experience success, the next obvious level of growth for that person is to teach someone else how to do it, right? And so you want to equip people, helping others to do their job well. Developing, teaching them to do life well. This is another one of those that some people might have a hard time with. Depends on your corporate culture. But here's the deal. Let's say I'm working at a company and I've got a big team of people, and, you know, I got a guy that goes out and gets, you know, plastered drunk all weekend long, comes in Monday half faded, Wednesday he's half energy, right? But his work's really, really good, and he's good with the team, and, you know, he's got the capacity. All those things are, but you know, something in his personal life is interfering with the success of not only his professional life, but, you know, it is hurting his personal life. I would say delicately, right? Delicately, you've got to find a way to communicate with that individual or get them to get help. What John is saying in the book is he's saying, no matter what the cause may be, it is the responsibility of a leader on level 4 to help people to learn how to do life well. When you're trying to teach someone to be a great leader and you see that they're not great, they're not leading well personally, they're not leading themselves well, you need to intervene, you need to help them. But in today's litigious society, you've got to be really careful with how you jump out there on that ledge and try to help somebody, right? And you got to look at your own motivations, right? For instance, if somebody's gay and you aren't a fan of the homosexual lifestyle, and so you're working with a man leader that you're building up and he's got a boyfriend and you think that's impeding his success, I don't think you should go to him with that, because you're going to get sued, right? And you've got to check yourself. You've got to be like, wait a minute, this is a personal bias that I have, right? So make sure that you're not working on personal biases. Make sure that you're actually doing, you know, a measurement to see that this person's personal decisions are affecting their growth professionally. And then what you want to do is you want to try to help them and see if they're open to the help, right? So you do the assessment. As a level 4 leader, you should be continually on the lookout for holes in the life skills of somebody you're leading and developing. Now, let's be honest. A lot of what John's talking about here applies to us older folks working with younger people. There are people in their 20s and 30s that don't know how a washing machine works, that don't know how to cook pasta, that don't know how to make a bowl of hot oatmeal from scratch. There are people in the professional world that don't know how to read an analog clock, right? And so when you recognize these things, you know, you could offer to help with that. You could offer to say, if someone goes, man, I'm just really struggling right now. You know, I'm spending $600 a week on takeout food. What? Right? Because of the COVID crisis, right? So in the COVID crisis, people are doing curb pickup for restaurant food at $30, $40 a plate, and they're not even sitting at a table with silverware. They're getting styrofoam and plastic forks. So if you're mentoring somebody in leadership and they go, man, I'm just really struggling right now, you know, this COVID thing, I'm spending $300 a week on takeout. Why don't you cook? How can I help? You know, what if I got you some cooking lessons? What if, right? But always try and find a way to help people find success. And then that helps reinforce the level 2 leadership with the relationship. Yes. Also helps on productivity because now they're not weighed down by the distractions and the concerns they're having externally, and they're able to focus on the task at hand, right? And then through your example, remember we talked about example, through your example, they're going to know how to lead down to the next generation when they're bringing people up, okay? Empowering enables people to succeed. The best executive is the one who has the sense enough to pick good men to do what he wants done and self-restraint enough to keep from meddling with them while they do it, right? That's President Theodore Roosevelt said that. That was on page 213. Number 7 was measuring. It says evaluating those whom you develop to maximize their efforts. It says look into it, report report alternatives, look into it, let me know what you intend to do, look into it, let me know what you intend to do and do it, take action, let me know what you did, take action, no further contact is required, right? And what he's talking about there is there's 6 different levels of looking at people's kind of leadership traits, right? Are they, when it comes to their own leadership, do they have the confidence to just do it? Or do they have to report to you to get permission to do something, right? And when you start raising people to the point where they can just take action and then let you know what they did, or take action and not even let you know, you've probably gotten them to the point where they can start developing leaders beneath them, right? Because their confidence is that high. It says the laws of leadership at the people development level. So every level that John has had so far, there's been a section where he kind of equates the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership to that level of leadership, right? And I'm looking at the time. We're doing good on time. We're going to finish up here in just a few minutes. But the law of the process is one of them. The law of addition, I already demonstrated the law of addition with you. The law of the inner circle. Remember, John was talking about going to dinner and having all of those couples sit around him that he had helped develop them earlier in life, but now by developing them so well, they're now adding to him more than he's added to them, right? And just think about how that works, right, with his inner circle, right? So that's a really good deal. The law of empowerment, right? Letting people do stuff like, here, you take the reins, you make this happen. The law of explosive growth, right? And multiplicity. We talked about that multiplicity. And the law of the buy-in. People buy into the leader and then the vision, right? And that's part of that developing that level 2 leadership, right? It says beliefs that help a leader move up to level 5. Now, level 5 is pinnacle leadership, right? But here we go. The highest goal of leadership is to develop leaders and not gain followers or do the work. The more I lead, the less work I should do, right? Remember the Pareto laws that we talked about, right? So the Pareto principle is, 20% of my effort delivers 80% of my reward, right? And so the better I get at leadership or at growing a team, the more I want to focus on developing the leaders within that team than doing the work. They'll focus on doing the work because I'm focusing on developing the leaders, right? And then John even does kind of a breakout right there of the Pareto principle in a graph, right? 20 equals 80% return. To develop leaders, you got to create a leadership culture. Talked about that. If you work at a company that doesn't have a leadership culture, that doesn't encourage people to take the reins, that doesn't empower people, well, they find themselves kind of dying on the vine, right? Especially with young people, if you've got young people working in your company and they see no path of success, if they see no pathway to growth, man, they are going to jump that ship quick, right? They don't have the patience that people had 30 years ago, to sit and do nothing for 30 years or do the same thing, for 30 years. They want diversity. They want growth. They want, they want the accolades and the pat on the back, but they want that personal fulfillment of growth. And if your company doesn't offer that, you're going to lose your folks, right? So you want to champion leadership, you want to teach leadership, and you want to practice leadership. And I'll be honest with you, I've seen a lot of companies teach the leadership, but not practice the leadership. And that can be a different culture shift, right? So that's important. 3, developing leaders is a life commitment, not a job commitment. After leaving this last corporate position, that's where I can really see this taking form. And I recognized it when I worked at Ducati, because when I left Ducati, I stayed in touch with most of the people I worked with at Ducati. But it was kind of like on a peer level, right? Suzuki's a little bit different. I left Suzuki, and people that worked on my team still communicate with me on a constant basis. And it's one of the most rewarding things ever to know that my leadership wasn't job-based. My leadership was me-based. And that's really cool to see that happen in real life, right? It's humbling. It says a guide to growing through level 4, be willing to keep growing yourself, decide that people are worth the effort, and they're worth the effort. People are a pain in the butt, but they're worth the effort. Work through your own insecurities, right? Recruit the best people that you can develop. Man, surround yourself with smart people. I learned that from Austin Gray. I saw that in reality. I saw that, in action. Austin surrounded himself with really smart people that he could empower. He ended up having a really great teamwork underneath him. What a great manager he was. Commit to spend the time needed. Create a personal development process. Never work alone. That's a big one for me. I struggle with that myself because I'm a solopreneur right now, right? Never work alone. It says one of the secrets of developing leaders on level 4 is to have the people you are mentoring beside you as often as possible. And here we are in the middle of this COVID crisis trying to make that reality. What a difficult thing to do. Blend the soft and hard sides of development. Take responsibility for energizing others. Sometimes you got to be the juice, right? Sometimes you got to be the juice. Remain approachable as a leader, role model, and coach. Try to let people reach out to you and be open to meeting with them. Be generous with your time. I know in Leadership, we discussed time. In Leadership, we talked about you got to be generous with your time, provided you're being generous to the people you recruited to develop with your time. So you want to invest your time in like the top 20% of the people you're developing. The bottom 80% of the people that you're developing, that bottom 80% is only giving you 20% of your product, right? So if they're unwilling to be in the top 20%, they don't really, I say deserve, because now we come down to this judging thing again. I'm trying to stay away from the word judging, but realistically, you're one person. And so you have to be a good steward of your energy and your assets, which is you, right? And so as you're developing your people, you develop your top 20%. Now here's a key for you. That bottom 80%, the 20% you're developing, and then your bottom 80%, the people that you're developing, the top 20%, invariably are going to be working with people in the bottom 80% that they're going to be developing, right? And as everybody comes up a level, the cream's going to rise to the top. And there'll be certain people out of that 80% that bump up into someone else's 20%. So they're not being ignored. They're just not getting the response or the energy from you as timely as maybe you would prefer to give it to everybody, right? But you've got to be responsible, right? You got to be a good steward with what the Lord has given you. And that takes us to level 5, the pinnacle level of leadership. So next week will be the grand finale on finishing this book. And I'm super stoked to be able to spend this time with you. I wish that we had more live interaction on this and it was more of a discussion than a review, more of a mastermind than a review. But here's the deal. Last week we tried to do it and Zoom got broke into. So instead of putting the Zoom links out all over the planet to let everybody pop in, I only put it into communities where people were secure. And so nobody's here. I'm thrilled that the replay will be in the Mañana No Mas Academy. And I look forward to having you in there. This to me is this is a work of love. This is a work of I just want to pour into some people. I want to share what I've learned over the last few years. And I want to encourage people to be the best leaders that they can be. I'm in my 50s now. And I don't want to say I'm dying, because I'm not. I'm in some of the best health I've ever been. But I know that I have a limited amount of time to make an impact, to make a difference. And I want to share as much of the content, as much as the knowledge, as much as the magic that I've received. I want to share that with as many people as possible, which is why I'm doing this. During the COVID crisis, I thought it was hugely important that, somebody speak up. And it's not just somebody. There's a lot of people right now speaking up and sharing valuable information. And this, to me, is some of the most valuable stuff that you're going to see. Because as we come out of this COVID shutdown, as things start to return, not to normal, but to a new level of exposure, will you be working remotely? Will you be in a cube farm? Will you be, working in small clusters? Will offices go from being 40,000 square feet to a series of buildings that are 5,000 square feet, right? I don't know what the future is going to hold, but I know that through the theories of leadership, through the tools I developed through Mañana No Mas, and through some of this coaching that we're able to do online, that I can do my part to help you be better prepared. And so that's my prayer and hope for you. So like I do at the end of these, I will invite people that are non-believers that might be insulted that I would like to pray for you. If you choose to sign off now, you can do so. Let's say that the session is over as of now. Thank you so much for coming. For those of you that are believers, or those of you that are seekers, I would love to pray over us, pray for our country, and close us out for the next minute or so in prayer, and then hopefully see you again next Tuesday. All right. Father God, I thank you so much for this time, for the tools to communicate with others. Father, I thank you for the words that John Maxwell wrote. Father, I thank you for his wisdom. Oh God, I just thank you for the positive energy and the things that you have put in front of us. On a personal note, Father, I'm so thankful for you taking care of my family, my home, my kids. I mean, the lights are on, the pantry is full. And Father, it's during these times, these uncertain times, that I know that I myself am leaning on you more than ever. And in the end, maybe that's the best thing ever. Father, I pray for people that sign into these. I pray for people that watch the replays. Father, I pray for people that are seeking growth, that for people that are looking for answers, looking for ways to manage and help others. Father, I pray that they find value in these words. I pray that they find value in John Maxwell's writings. And I pray that my reviews and my highlighting is something that helps this come more alive for them, or gives it a better chance to set in and become something that is real to them. Father, help them to know that, help people that see this to know that they're not alone, and that there are many that are interested in leading, developing, and adding value to others. Father, we ask that you would keep people safe. Father, there's a lot of stuff going on right now with riots and looting and protesting and tearing down statues and monuments and just all kinds of stuff. And Father God, I pray for people's safety. And I pray for their mental safety. I pray for their emotional safety. Father, I pray for their spiritual safety. God, I love you, and I thank you for all that you've done for me and my family. I thank you for what you do for my listeners. And Father, I do pray that you continue to take care of us and be faithful in your promises. Amen. Folks, I do this out of love. I do it because I love you. I hope that you're enjoying, if you haven't seen this live, I hope that you're enjoying the replay, and I hope that you're finding some value in the Mañana No Mas Academy. If this academy is something that makes sense to you, or something you think that your company or organization could use as a tool, just reach out to me, hit the contact link at the top in the menu. If you need people to have access to the other courses that are already in Mañana No Mas, hit me up on that. And if you want a custom application for your place of employment or organization, again, hit the contact link. Let me know what it is you need. We'll start the conversation, and we'll move you to the next stages of development. All right. Love y'all. Have a great one.